Chapter 331, Mythological Archaeology, 3. The beast bone was like a continent. From the perspective of biology, Feng Lin could instantly tell that this was the tibia of a leopard or tiger-type life form. Its head and body had vanished long ago, and no one knew where the parts were. Just a bone like this was already so large. What size was its original form? Was it a monster as large as a star system? My God. Although this wasn't the first time they saw it, Sut and the others also couldn't mask their shock. What made them feel strange was that this time was different from the past. Through Feng Lin's guidance, they knew that this place was a battlefield for shamans and demons. After using the deduction restoration technique of the AI, they already knew a part of the truth. What made them feel strange was that this ruin of darkness was a fragment of the ancient mythological continent. But on the battlefield of shamans and demons, they didn't discover any giant demons or shamans. Where did this mysterious giant bone come from? Everyone, wear your micromecha armor and prepare to disembark, Sut spoke. The robots brought over tailor-made micromechas for the people here. The micromechas had an oxygen circulation system. As long as there was enough energy, it could provide endless amounts of oxygen for the cultivators. This was peak-tier equipment for cultivators to traverse space. In a large cavity on the beast bone, the flying shuttle transformed into a beam of silver light and shot into it like small fish that was not conspicuous at all. Feng Lin stood with Zhao Yui and the others at the door, preparing to land. They spent roughly half an hour traveling through the space inside the bone before finally stopping. The shuttle door will be opening, everyone please prepare to disembark, the AI reminded. Follow me. Zhao Yui spoke in a low voice and took the initiative to rush out. The micromecha shot out strong bursts of airflow, causing her to resemble a fired arrow. Iron Pillar followed closely behind her. Feng Lin drew in a deep breath and followed after them as well. At the back, Sut and the rest brought up the rear. In the darkness of space, the 5 teams of people were like insignificant specks of dust. The flying shuttle parked itself against a bone wall. It was unknown how much distance they had traversed since they saw the bone. The amount of distance was so vast that one couldn't see the end of it with a single glance. Zhao Yui led the way, and they soon arrived at the corner of the wall. A bone splinter with oracle-styled inscriptions could be seen here. If this wasn't the alchemy recipe for the Dustfall Immortal Pill, what was it? Previously, this is the location where we obtained the recipe from, said Zhao Yui. Feng Lin nodded. He moved nearer and sent out his spirit force to study the inscriptions. This bone splinter might be as big as a large pillar, but its base was normal bone. Other than the inscriptions, there was nothing mystical about it. The only difference was that despite the passage of time, this bone still shone like jade and hadn't fossilized. But that seemed to be the only special thing. Feng Lin shook his head, not feeling satisfied at all. This is the so-called mythological secret realm. Why does it feel so average? He released his spirit force, sufficient enough to envelop the distance of 100 kilometers. All tiny microscopic objects appeared in his perception. What a strong spirit force! Although it was hard to awaken mental/spirit type genes, the students of the Great Wall University were elites. There were still quite a number of them who had done so. His cultivation base might be weak, but all his other abilities seemed to be extremely strong. However, only Zhao Yui's eyes were filled with wonder. Sut and the others exchanged secretive looks, no one knew what they were thinking about. But they didn't know that Feng Lin's spirit force had already been trained to an extremely precise level where nothing, no matter how minute, could escape his perception. The human heart was treacherous. He naturally had to be on his guard against that. Feng Lin was filled with vigilance. Roughly about 10 minutes later, his heart stirred. He seemed to have made some discoveries. The micro-mechas rapidly flew in a certain direction under his control and they came to a place 50 kilometers away. A bone wall with the luster of jade appeared before his eyes. Feng Lin punched out only to see the white light radiating from the bone wall flashing, but there was no other effect. Sky-flipping hammer imprint. His stance changed. His fists were like sky-flipping hammers, crashing down like mountains wanting to destroy the heavens and earth. Yet, the bone wall merely trembled a little. It suffered no damage at all. What a tough bone. Feng Lin furrowed his brows. Right now, his vitality stats had already reached above 1,200. His punches were extremely ferocious. A casual punch would have the force of several hundreds of kilograms in terms of weight, sufficient to allow him to destroy mountains. Yet, how was he unable to do anything to a piece of bone that was left to rot for such a long time? Feng Lin, what did you discover? At this moment, Zhao Yui and the others caught up to him. Feng Lin didn't conceal anything. If his cultivation base was insufficient, he had to borrow the strength of everyone. He pointed to below his feet as he spoke. Earlier when I sent out my spirit force, I discovered spiritual fluctuations somewhere below or within this bone wall. I believe the spirit particles may be the remnant spiritual aura from ancient objects. Oh. Zhao Yui and the others instantly grew excited when they heard this. Ancient spiritual objects were extraordinary, and they had remnants of mythological might left in them. Powerful ones were known as mythological treasures, and once they appeared, conflicts would certainly form as everyone would fight each other to seize them. They didn't discover anything despite having searched for such a long time, but Feng Lin merely came here once and already found something the moment he scanned with his spirit force. Was it true or false? It seemed that Feng Lin could tell what they were thinking. He slowly shook his head. The fluctuations seem extremely weak, flashing on and off. It doesn't seem to be from a mythological treasure. In truth, even if the thing he sensed was really a treasure, it would be impossible for him to reveal it like this. Greed for treasures would surely stir the hearts of men. If there really was a treasure, it was unknown whether these people would start to have malicious thoughts or not. This? When they heard his words, Sut and the others hesitated. No matter if it is a treasure or not, it is worth a try. Zhao Yui exuded an air of heroism as she decisively took the initiative to act. True martial great force. She clenched her fists and blasted out with them. An overwhelming might capable of subduing all devils bore down, shaking the area here as starlight twisted. Her punch force actually turned into something corporeal, filled the vacuum up with it. The intense pressure forced Feng Lin and the others to retreat several steps back. Even Sut, who was at the elite adept level, had to retreat. Zhao Yui was the top ranker of the moon-level heavens chosen rankings and was walking on a paragon mythology path, obtaining the inheritance of the Jinwu Emperor. She had the capabilities to jump levels and fight stronger opponents. Clearly, Sut and the others weren't her matches in a one-on-one. Boom. The punch landed, actually causing cracks to appear. However, that was merely it. It was still a long way from being destroyed. The toughness of this bone was truly exceptional. The experts here couldn't help but draw in a cold breath. Let's act together. Zhao Yui called out, encouraging everyone to attack together. 3 elite adepts and 11 adepts all acted together. Thunder, lightning, fire, all sorts of energy fused and blasted out explosively. The part of the bone that had cracked from Zhao Yui's earlier attack finally shattered, revealing a hole that was like a tunnel of darkness. Who? A powerful wave of spiritual chi gushed forth from within, so strong that it had the force of gale winds that instantly blew Feng Lin and the others away. Chapter 332, Comprehending Tao from Wall Murals. Swoosh. The powerful spiritual chi was like a blast of wind. Feng Lin, Zhao Yui, and the others were all blown away, somersaulting in the air as they scattered in 4 directions. It took them some effort before they stabilized themselves and gathered at the bone wall once more. What's out of their expectations was that after the bone wall was broken through, there wasn't any mythological treasure, only a giant hole was revealed instead. It was so deep that its bottom couldn't be seen, like a passageway leading to an unknown dimension. Feng Lin's eyes gleamed sharply. Earlier when he sent out his spirit force, he had sensed that this stretch of bone was weaker than usual, like its inner composition was hollow, and he sensed the minute fluctuations of spirit particles. He didn't expect it to be true. This bone-like continent, was there another hidden space within it? How could the spiritual chi feel so vast? Should they enter for a look? Zhao Yui and the others exchanged glances and hesitated, not able to come to a decision so quickly. Look quickly. A shocked voice rang out. Iron Pillar pointed at something. Creak, creak. The bone wall that was shattered by them actually started to mend rapidly, like it was something alive. In the blink of an eye, the opening they created was about to close. There was no time to think too much, all of them decided to rush in. If there wasn't anything, they could blast the bone wall again to create an opening from the inside out. After they entered, the opening was closed up completely. Feng Lin and the others glanced at the surroundings, but they couldn't see anything due to the darkness. They had no idea where this passageway led to. By floating here, it felt like they had entered a bottomless black hole. Deathly silence was everywhere, and the atmosphere involuntarily caused their souls to tremble. Only their micromechas produced light, making it seem as though they were each carrying a torch, which caused them to feel somewhat more at ease. Everyone increased their speed and flew forward, moving into the depths. The bone walls in the surroundings began to move backward in their vision. Inside the bone wall, the space here wasn't a vacuum. It contained a large amount of gaseous substances. Everyone flew through the air, causing trails of airwaves behind them. The AI of the micromecha rapidly scanned the atmosphere. The spiritual chi index here rose quickly, reaching over 60%. What a concentrated spiritual chi! Everyone mumbled, feeling extremely astonished. The spiritual chi gathered into clouds and mists, becoming almost substantial. Discovered active air particles can support breathing for life, said the AI of the micromechas. What? There's even air here? Zhao Yui and the others were extremely shocked. They opened up their face piece and instantly sensed active air particles flying toward their nostrils. The air felt extremely clear. A single breath caused them to feel extremely refreshed, like their entire bodies were baptized. Where did this spiritual chi come from? There was no rotten smell that might have come from the spiritual chi being sealed for a long time. It was clear and refreshing and even had the fragrance of grass and flowers. Feng Lin and the others were bewildered. The light grew brighter and was like lamps illuminating the area. They could see that the bone walls in the surroundings were glossy and radiated a jade-like luster. Many murals were engraved upon them. Shamans wielding bone hammers as large as pillars, hammering non-stop. Malevolent-looking tigers grouped together, howling relentlessly. Numerous golden crows soared through the air, their bodies burning with golden fire, and were like blazing comets. A giant was galloping on the ground, chasing after them. Up ahead, even rivers and mountains were unable to obstruct his steps. At a mountain far away, there was another giant who lifted the bow in his hand. He slowly aimed and tracked the golden crows. The golden crows increased their speeds and let out a cacophony of shrieks. There was also another giant clashing against a supreme demon with a bull head and human body. Both seemed to be evenly matched and looked to be wrestling. The shamans were savage and the demons were sinister. During the ancient era, the war between shamans and demons was clearly shown to them through the murals. All the scenes were recorded, one could even feel a barbaric air from the murals. The drawings were extremely vivid, like they were alive. They didn't seem to be a drawing and looked more like photographs instead. Zhao Yui and the others went nearer to them and were in a daze after looking through a few of them. What ancient murals are these? Who drew them? I can sense boundless ancientness from the murals. The ancient aura is truly shocking. An indescribable feeling could be felt toward the murals, stirring their hearts and drawing them in. The shamans and demons grew more lifelike in their eyes, like they suddenly became alive, thus drawing them closer and closer. Even their heads were about to be pressed into the wall. They could clearly see everything that was happening in the murals. I can sense the usage of energy, the true essence of fire. I can see the true nature of flowing water. The principle of light is irradiation. All sorts of techniques were employed in the war, allowing them to sense the essence of energy usage through the murals. Primitive wars were filled with the true essence of the martial Tao. Zhao Yu mumbled. Her eyes were fixedly staring at the scenes of the battles as she immersed herself within. It was like she could see the scene of the martial Tao being birthed during the primordial era. Each of the shamans was like a giant. Their bodies were extremely muscular, all their techniques and movements were filled with a primitive charm, with force and violence, achieving a balance between strength and beauty. These murals were different from the restored holographic scenes they watched earlier. That was just a simulation by the AI, and many things were inaccurate. These murals on the wall recorded the true quintessence of the battle between shamans and demons. All the essential parts were here, revealing the base nature of the power employed by shamans and demons. They were all genius students of the Great Wall University. From these murals, they could see their future paths more clearly. Feng Lin was the same as well. The murals were filled with a primitive aura and seemed so real. They didn't seem to be drawn by humans but rather were formed naturally by the heavens and earth, containing the power of creation within, extremely extraordinary. Leopards, wolves, tigers, panthers, all sorts of demonic beasts could be seen. They were incomparably brutal and had cultivated before, which maximized the innate advantages of their races. Each of their movements contained a profoundness within. Feng Lin simply glanced over. He could feel the blood in his body churning as his hands started to move, mimicking the movements of the beasts and trying to get a feel of the profoundness. Wild beasts became demons, they were the first forms of demons. By viewing the murals, he saw a myriad of beasts and each of them seemed powerful enough to destroy the heavens and earth, radiating shocking power. He grew increasingly immersed as he gained insights, entering a miraculous state of mind. When he ignored the external forms of the beasts, he could see the flow of energies linked to the various movements made by the demonic beasts. His body automatically took up stances, changing them one after the other as he attempted to move according to the flow. Beast-like fist art. This martial art mimicked the forms of the myriad of beasts. Therefore, Feng Lin wanted to comprehend the profound essence that he sensed within the murals as he tried out the moves one after another. His Beast King gene activated, circulating his chi and blood while thunderous sounds echoed from within his body. True dragons, Xuanwus, black tortoises, phoenixes. These divine beasts that had vanished during ancient times were now all before his vision. Feng Lin's moves changed, they were imbued with the winding of dragons, the soaring of phoenixes, the balefulness of white tigers, the heaviness of black tortoises, and the auspiciousness of Kirins. Genetic potential plus 2.1, plus 2.1, plus 2.1. His genetic potential surged. By practicing the beast-like fist art, he could compare his insights with the true essence of the myriad of beasts as he slowly modified his moves. Chapter 333, 5 Spirits' Ominous Fist. 5 types of divine beasts, they were the existences at the absolute pinnacle of all life forms in heavens and earth. Dragons were the kings in the water, phoenixes were the kings at the sky, while Kirins were the kings on the ground. Xuanwu, black tortoise, could excel in both the land and the sea. White tigers had wings, which allowed them to be one with the wind. They were the king of the 100 beasts. 5 spiritual divine beings in 5 directions. They were the most perfect existences in the world, and the essence of the multitude of lives could be found on them. If their movements were turned into martial arts, they would be the very essence of the beast-like fist art. The winding movements of snakes and dragons, the soaring of phoenixes, the ferociousness of white tigers, the heaviness of black tortoises, and the auspiciousness of Kirins. Feng Lin repeatedly tried to gain insights into the movements of the 5 divine beasts in the murals, incorporating their movements into his fist art. He could sense that the beast-like fist art was being greatly strengthened. Before this, he combined the essence of many wild beasts, but it wasn't very strong. It could only be considered quite a chaotic style with no core. At most, it could only fuse the essence of the wild beast's attacks into one. Now, by gaining insights into the movements of the divine creatures, the core of his beast-like fist art was formed. In an instant, his fist art now seemed to be capable of containing a myriad of changes to deal with all situations. Boom, boom, boom. His punch force caused the entire space to rumble. Feng Lin's entire body seemed to be undergoing a transformation, his flesh and blood vibrating in resonance. His head was as towering as the horns of dragons, his back was bent like a bow, resembling the majesticness of a tortoise. His legs were filled with the explosive powers of ferocious tigers, phoenix's wings seemingly attached to his back. Even his hands formed into talons like how Kirins seized their prey to tear them apart. His moves became increasingly savage, causing tearing sounds to reverberate throughout the air. His movements were so fast that only shadows could be seen. His punches actually managed to affect the energy in the air, forming wind, fire, earth, all sorts of elemental phenomena to occur. After all, the 5 divine creatures were incarnations of the 5 elements. After incorporating the essence of the 5 spiritual divine beasts, Feng Lin's beast-like fist art underwent a change in terms of quality. It broke through the limit of the low martial tier and reached the mid-martial tier, capable of using mere martial arts to affect energy. Tiger, leopard, snake, crane, elephant, these animal forms were gradually being merged together. The complex stances of the beast-like fist art were now condensed into only 5 stances. This was no longer the beast-like fist art, it should be named the 5 spirits ominous fist art. Although he only had 5 stances now, they incorporated all the profoundness of the movements of all beasts. Traces of everything could be seen within, fused into one. Feng Lin floated in the air, practicing his new fist art. There was actually energy revolving around his body due to his movements. White Tiger 7 slaughters. The air was sliced as the image of a ferocious tiger's head formed. It roared in anger, causing the hearts of people to tremble. A wild wind gusted by, slicing into the tough bone walls and causing bone powder to fly. Azure Dragon 9 transformations. His body was so supple that it was like he had no bones. He floated in the air, twisting and winding about, moving freely like a meandering dragon. His hands formed into dragon claws, slashing out with them and actually causing water vapor to gather around him. It formed into the image of a dragon with a beard resembling whips and a head full of horns. Vermilion bird swallows the sun. His movements were like thunder, giving rise to towering flames. Black tortoise carries the mountains. His punches were as heavy as mountains, provoking an intense earthquake. Wild dance of the Kirin. He roared like thunder, and lightning bolts fell around him. The 5 spirits' ominous fist contained the profound essence of water, fire, earth, wind, and thunder. Its power was extremely fierce. Ordinary people would never be able to create such a fist art. At this moment, the images of the 5 spiritual divine creatures could clearly be seen around him. These seemingly beautiful stances were incredibly profound, containing the power to deal critical damage. It was incomparably terrifying. However, this wasn't the end yet. The 5 spirits, spiritual creatures, were innately divine creatures. They were the evolution of heaven's and earth's law. By studying their movements, one could comprehend the law of heavens and earth. Now Feng Lin couldn't even sense the slightest bit of those laws. Thus, there were still many profound mysteries that he couldn't see through. He had to do further research. He was completely immersed, yet he didn't discover that the state of his body was rapidly weakening. His eyes were bloodshot, and his chi and blood was burning. It was like he didn't know fatigue as he continued to practice his fist art, ignoring the expenditure of his origin chi. It looked like he was completely sunk, unable to extricate himself. He would stop only if his chi and blood was exhausted and he died of exhaustion. Roar. In the depths of his heart, the roar of an enraged ape sounded out. Boundless baleful chi surged and shocked him awake. Feng Lin was startled. He stood at his original location as he perspired cold sweat. He had almost lost himself within the murals. One mustn't stare too long at the murals. These murals contained the truth of the shamans and demons battlefield, containing boundless Tao charm. If one's will wasn't strong enough, they would surely sink into it completely, unable to extricate themselves. Their souls might even be assimilated into the murals. Feng Lin glanced around and discovered that the people around him all had infatuated looks on their faces. Wake up. He moved over, wanting to wake them. But Iron Pillar, who was the nearest to him, instinctively threw a punch toward him. Iron Break Fist. This punch blasted out, filled with unstoppable momentum. It felt like a mountain of iron was crashing at Feng Lin. Feng Lin instinctively raised his hands, blocking before his chest. At the next moment, his entire person was flung through the air as he slammed heavily onto the bone wall. His entire body ached like it was about to crumble apart. His expression turned solemn. This Iron Pillar was just at the adept level, yet his punch was so powerful. There was no need to mention anything about the others. These people had fallen into a dazed state as they stared at the murals, attempting to comprehend insights. If he tried to wake them, he would instantly draw their attacks. If he interrupted them now, not only would he be attacked, but they might also felt that he wanted to stop them from gaining insights which would result in them viewing him with hostility. He didn't know if the others could extricate themselves, but as for Zhao Yue, she was walking on the mythological path of the Jinwu Emperor. Given the strength of her Tao heart, there was no need for him to be worried about her. Seeing that the others were still comprehending insights, Feng Lin turned his gaze into the depths of this place. It was an unknown location filled with mystery. Feng Lin sped over there. Even more murals appeared and there were countless scenes on them. All of them were about battles between shamans and demons, each containing their own mysteries. Many extinct demonic beasts could be found on them. Feng Lin activated his ID microchip and scanned all the pictures, recording them. The value of these pieces of mythological knowledge was considerable. If he wanted to sell them after he got out, it was unknown how many star coins and contribution points would they be worth. He could also use them for his Mythological Genes Association, establishing its foundation, or maybe even use the knowledge to deduce other unique mythological paths. As for the moves used by those giant shamans, there was no need to say anything about them. The art of killing, of slaughter, and massacre, they were the most primitive forms of martial arts and contained the true essence of the martial Tao. It was enough to cause any martial artists to fall into a daze. He could use this knowledge to perfect his own martial arts. However, Feng Lin didn't have the time to slowly learn them now. Time was tight, so he chose to record them first before slowly probing their secrets in the future. Feng Lin activated the strongest scanning abilities of his microchip, recording the countless numbers of murals here. His body continued to fly forward, to the depths of this place. Gradually, a layer of thick fog appeared before his vision, spreading out continuously and blotting everything out. Should he continue forward? Feng Lin began to hesitate. He used his spirit force to probe, but this action caused the thick fog to churn and move silently. It revealed a giant vortex that sucked him into it, causing him to vanish from this location. A feeling of time and space switching over could be felt. Feng Lin wanted to fly up into the air, but he discovered that he was actually being spat out from the mouth of a volcano. After that, when the gravity kicked in, his body began to plummet rapidly. A brand new world appeared before his eyes, and it was filled with desolate wilderness. Chapter 334, One-Day Journey in the Primordial World. The mountains and rivers were a beautiful sight. The fluctuations of the mountains and their rising peaks were over 10,000 meters tall. It was as if many heavenly pillars were rising from the ground and shooting towards the sky. Ancient, dignified, majestic. Endless vast and vicissitude auras came gushing over. There were large stretches of primitive forests, and the entire place was like the primordial world before the universe was formed. Each ancient tree was like a huge pillar, and even the thinnest of them would require over 10 people to carry it up. It was unknown how long they had been growing for, but their vitality remained extremely strong and they were evergreen all year round. The primordial world, the most primitive scene. It felt as if the space-time had been switched and Feng Lin was very surprised by this. In fact, he wasn't unfamiliar with this feeling. When he entered the Kusanagi mythological secret realm, he had experienced a similar scene. The mythological secret realm was situated independently in a stretch of space, cut off from the rest of the world. Therefore, they would naturally appear to be very different. Then where was this place? Feng Lin started to feel curious, and his spirit force went probing out toward the surroundings. Boom, boom, boom. Suddenly, the earth trembled. Smoke and dust seethed in the far distance. A group of massive figures came charging over, each of their 2 huge teeth piercing into the air. They looked very terrifying and savage. This was clearly a herd of mammoths that had already gone extinct in ancient Earth. Although they looked very similar, their bodies were way bigger than the fossils. Each of them was over 30 meters tall, and they were like small mountains. They came charging over, and their huge feet left many cavities in the ground. Howl, howl, howl. Sharp cries rang out incessantly. A group of saber-toothed tigers that had a height of over 10 meters were chasing behind the mammoths, their eyes gleaming with greed and brutality. Whenever 1 or 2 of the mammoths were to fall behind the rest of the herd, they would immediately be surrounded and devoured by the saber-toothed tigers. This wasn't all. Smoke and dust seethed and gigantic pangolins, moas, crocodiles, many ancient animals that should have been extinct in the primitive times appeared. It was as if this place was the Jurassic world. The beast tide seethed and came charging over from the distance. The fluctuations formed a stretch of continuous black tidal waves. Every wild beast was wearing terrified expressions, as if they were escaping something horrifying. Feng Lin stood at the mountain pass and watched silently, not regaining his senses even after a very long time had passed. A primordial scene that was ancient and vicissitude appeared before his eyes. After the fog, it felt as if he had passed through the passage of time and arrived in the primordial ages of ancient times. It was novel yet astonishing. Screech. A screech that pierced through the sky rang out, and the sky immediately darkened. A huge shadow was cast, covering up the sun. Although it was daylight, it seemed as dark as night. The sun and moon shied away, and there was no hint of light except at the very edge of the horizons. Feng Lin raised his head and looked over. Through the dim light, he could only see a huge pair of indescribable wings flashing, sending up surging wind across the land. Dust flew up, and the mammoths that were as heavy as mountains, the ferocious saber-toothed tigers, and the large scaly pangolins, all of them were thrown into the sky like small rats, swallowed into the huge mouth, and chewed up into minced meat. The smell of blood permeated the air. Strong gales gushed. The light on the horizon started to brighten up. Feng Lin raised his head and looked over, quickly recording it with his identity microchip. A gigantic bird that had the body of a fish and a pair of huge wings let out a sharp screech and flew across the sky, disappearing into the horizon. In the northern darkness, there is a fish and its name is Kuan. The Kuan is so huge I don't know how many thousand li it measures. It changes and becomes a bird whose name is Peng. The back of the Peng measures I don't know how many thousand li across. When it rises and flies off, its wings are like clouds all over the sky. When the sea begins to move, this bird sets off for the southern darkness. This was Kuanpeng? Having the body of a fish and wings of a bird, other than this mysterious creature in Huaxia's ancient myths and legends, he couldn't think of any other creature that would fit this description. The Kuanpeng spread out its wings that were as large as the universe. Its vertical slit pupils radiated an intelligent glow, and they were filled with contempt toward life. Its wings flapped and it disappeared into the horizon, leaving behind seething demonic auras that lingered for a very long time in the air. The ground was battered and a stretch of emptiness appeared within the beast wave. The beasts there had been devoured. However, the group of beasts behind continued to charge forth in waves, instantly drowning the traces left behind by the Kunpeng. It disappeared entirely. A primitive scene, a primordial world. Everything was just so unbelievable. To think that there was still an actual surviving world of myths and legends after all this time. If this scene were to spread out, it would probably cause a commotion throughout the entire universe. Countless people and organizations would want to come in to investigate and explore this place. An extremely thick spiritual qi permeated the air, turning into the fog to nourish all sorts of strange flowers and mysterious grass. They took all sorts of strange forms and emitted intense spiritual vigor. Many plants had already been extinct in the universe. This was the primordial world? Feng Lin was secretly overjoyed. It's a great, great fortune. If he could bring out these strange beasts and plants, he wondered how many contribution points he could exchange them for. But how can such a primordial world survive and be forgotten by the rest of the world? There must be some kind of huge secret behind this. The beast wave was filled with ancient ferocious living creatures that could count as primitive hegemonic level existence. Feng Lin went all out to conceal his own aura. Although he was unafraid, he didn't wish to attract unnecessary trouble either. He was observing from the side and suddenly noticed a strange thing. These beasts came charging over from the distance, and there were all sorts of living creatures mixed together. Some of them were even deadly foes with each other. However, they didn't show any signs of attacking each other, and their pupils were magnified, filled with intense terror. It was as if they were desperately fleeing for their lives. It was as if the world's end had arrived and they wanted to run away as quickly and as far as possible. What on earth happened there? Feng Lin couldn't help but find things strange. He looked toward the source of the beast wave. The primordial world was shrouded in mystery everywhere. He wondered what kind of abnormalities had taken place there. Maybe he might be able to see through some truth. Wealth was sought amidst dangers. Feng Lin had the spiritual stone monkey gene's abilities and could survive for at least an hour even in outer space. He would be able to protect himself regardless of how bad the environment was, and he would naturally not be afraid of anything. He didn't retreat but advance instead, moving toward the beast wave. The vast land and the beast waves were like a long dragon that one couldn't see the end of. Feng Lin ran across the land like illusions, and the scenery was thrown off behind him. However, even after very long, he couldn't see the origin of the beast wave. He decided not to wait any longer and stomped down heavily on the ground. His figure leaped into the air, and he rode on the clouds, dashing out through the sky. The higher he went up, the clearer were the mountains and rivers under his feet. Intense spiritual qi gushed into his body, and even his genetic power became lively. Feng Lin roamed in the sky, feeling exhilarated that everything was under his feet. A stream of black smoke rose, instantly attracting his attention. Feng Lin accelerated and the black smoke that was like a huge pillar was gradually presented before him. A tall mountain that was beyond one's imagination stood with a height of over 30,000 meters. The top of the mountain spurted out burning flames, illuminating the sky in red and sending black, seething smoke all over. The forest at the bottom of the mountain was in a state of chaos. Countless wild beasts were fleeing in a rage, as if it was the end of the world. Feng Lin suddenly discovered that these flames were ordinary yellow-red color but had an intense baleful aura. This was Earthfiend True Fire. Chapter 335, One-Day Journey in the Primordial World, 2. The baleful auras in the ground rose amidst the fire, incinerating everything. It turned into flame currents when in contact with the rocks and was also known as the stone fire. The flames spurting out from this volcano weren't ordinary flames. They were born from great baleful auras that had melted into the flames. The flames were demonic. Recalling the alchemy records, he immediately recognized that this was the rare earth fiend true fire. This kind of flames didn't have an excellent fire prowess, but it was considered top-grade flames in alchemy. Medicine refining was an art that changed destinies. It wasn't a case where the higher the temperature, the better it would be. It required a balance to be able to produce endless profoundness. Take for example the Golden Crow True Fire that was also called the Great Solar Fire. It was the flames with the highest temperature in the world, but its fire prowess was too domineering and it incinerated everything. Once something landed within it, they would be instantly turned into ashes, let alone spiritual medicine. Although it had strong prowess, it was difficult to be used in alchemy. The Earth Fiend True Fire's prowess wasn't strong, but it was reserved and scorching. It flowed like water and burned slowly without damaging the item's essential qualities. It allowed the user to extract the medicinal essence of ingredients, capable of stimulating the medicinal prowess to the greatest level. Feng Lin was still troubled over not having a true fire then he found one so quickly. It didn't take any effort at all. Feng Lin was secretly surprised as well. There would definitely be things that were inevitable amidst coincidences. In the declining interstellar era, there were extremely few true fires existing. It was an extremely difficult task to locate them. However, in the primordial times where there was plenty of spiritual qi, spiritual objects could be seen everywhere. True fires were everywhere just like ordinary flames. They weren't worth anything at all. This volcano that was several 10,000 meters tall erupted and all of the flames were Earth Fiend True Fire. The flame currents seethed and fire gushed out from the volcano's mouth. From afar, it looked like a huge torch, illuminating the sky. Black smoke seethed, burning up all the oxygen in the air. Just getting close would make one feel out of breath. Feng Lin didn't back off but advanced instead. He rode on the clouds and got closer toward the volcano. His spirit force slashed down fiercely like a sword, immediately scattering the black smoke. A pool of flames appeared before him. The flames seethed incessantly like tidal waves and were a purplish-red color. The scene was like hell. Even with Feng Lin's stone monkey body, he didn't dare to enter the flames personally when the temperature was so high. True fire and ordinary flames were different. Ordinary flames were just the energy status that was formed when particles spurted out. They didn't have any material form. True fire, on the other hand, possessed a material form and had both the attributes of matter and energy. They also possessed mysterious powers. The Earth Fiend True Fire in this volcano would melt even an entire space shuttle into dregs if it were to fly inside. No matter how strong Feng Lin's body was, it wasn't able to go up against the prowess of the heavens and earth. If he wished to subdue it completely, he'd have to extract the True Fire's fire seed. Only when the fire seed was in one's hands would the person be able to control it freely. However, fire seeds were hidden in the depths of true fires. It was very hard to capture them without unique means. Feng Lin tried sending out his spirit force, but the moment it entered, he could feel a scorching temperature incinerating his spirit force completely. Spirit force had no shape or material and tended to have no issues advancing forth. However, this was the first time it had become ineffective, being unable to even go inside the flames. It was wishful talk to be wanting to force a path through the flames. Feng Lin was unable to think of any plans at the moment, and he just stood above the pool of flames, not knowing where to start. Feng Lin's fingers stroked the 2 rings he had, and he was suddenly struck with an idea. How could he forget that he still had an amazing divine item, the measureless divine metal cudgel? This metal cudgel's legacy was from the ancient mythological ages, and its source was unknown. It didn't experience any corrosion over the countless years, could change its size freely, and supported an entire huge continent. Until now, Feng Lin had yet to study all of its secrets entirely. Although this Earth Fiend True Fire was blazing hot, it couldn't melt the measureless divine metal cudgel. Grow, grow, grow. With a single thought from Feng Lin, the metal cudgel grew bigger and soon exceeded 100 meters in length. It pierced fiercely through the flames like a huge heavenly pillar and kept on stirring non-stop. Like a god that had disturbed the seas, the flowing flames formed a huge whirlpool, spinning non-stop and releasing swooshing sounds. An empty area was gradually exposed in the middle, revealing the interior of the flames. However, the depth of this pool of flames was really beyond his imagination. It was at least several hundred meters. Feng Lin took in a deep breath of air, summoned all of his strength, and stirred. The flaming whirlpool got increasingly bigger, slapping against the cliffs around the volcano, melting the rocks, and flowing everywhere. However, Feng Lin didn't turn his eyes away. He merely stared at the bottom of the whirlpool. Suddenly, a stretch of purple color appeared before his eyes, as bright as the stars. He focused his vision and saw a pure purple-colored lotus flower with 18 petals drifting at the very bottom of the flames. It bloomed there by itself, away from the world. Each petal was formed from pure purple-colored flames. It was essentially immaterial but seemed as if it had a material body. This is the Earth Fiend True Fire's fire seed. Feng Lin was overjoyed and he immediately sent his spirit force extending over, forming invisible hands and wanting to grab it across space. However, his spirit force was incinerated completely. This can't go on. Feng Lin recalled the method of subduing true fires that was recorded in alchemy. He kept on forming seals with his hands like butterflies darting amongst the flowers. His spirit force started to change as his hands moved, forming many layers and materializing into a sphere that was bundled up tightly. Golden light condensed in the middle, forming an ancient rune. It was the word assimilate. The spiritual sphere landed onto the fire lotus and started to burn up immediately and rapidly. It was being depleted non-stop and becoming increasingly smaller in size. Drops of cold sweat flowed down Feng Lin's forehead. It felt extremely strenuous. The heat from the fire lotus was far too domineering and it wasn't a simple task to subdue it. However, the more this was so, the more he mustn't have any delays. He gritted his teeth and sent all of his spirit force gushing into the small spirit sphere. It was as if a round metal egg was severely scorched, but it still protected the rune in the core, preventing it from being damaged. In the end, when there was only a faint layer of it left, the rune finally landed into the fire lotus. It suddenly burst out in light, and the scattered flames were subdued and assimilated, immediately becoming tame like a sheep. Feng Lin suddenly felt that he had formed a bright, divine connection with the fire lotus. With just a single thought, he would be able to command it like it was his own arm. With a wave of his hand, the amount of force he released dropped. The flame currents in the surroundings gushed over, instantly scattering the whirlpool. However, Feng Lin wasn't concerned at all. With a slight smile, he put out his hand and beckoned. Swoosh! A fire lotus burst out through the flames and landed in his hand, floating quietly as if it was material. The fire prowess was restrained and it didn't harm him in the slightest. Feng Lin smiled. This thing might appear normal, but as long as the fire seed was around, it would be able to materialize true fire by consuming Feng Lin's energy. It would incinerate everything and had all sorts of wonderful uses. Withdraw. He suddenly formed seals with his hand, and the fire lotus suddenly contracted in size, entering the top of his head. A purple lotus print appeared on his forehead, adding a hint of mystery to his elegant face and making him appear like a celestial. Feng Lin closed his eyes and sensed quietly. Suddenly, his eyes opened and violet flame flashed from within. He formed seals with both hands, making them appear like blooming lotus flower. Fire, come. Bang. A ball of flames silently shot out from his palms, burning by itself and freely taking the forms of various shapes, fowls and beasts, flowers, birds, fish, bugs. There was no end to what form it could take. A hint of understanding rose in Feng Lin's heart. He had finally subdued the true fire completely. Chapter 336, One-day journey in the primordial world, 3. The flames burned, covering his entire body and making him appear like a person that was made up of flames. Heat seethed and extended out in all directions with great domination. Feng Lin fully focused on trying to control the fire prowess, only slowly coming to a stop when he had mastered the control and could change it freely. Withdraw. Forming seals with his hands, the true fire turned into a fire lotus and entered his body. He looked down at his body. Other than his clothes being damaged, he didn't suffer from any injuries at all. He didn't even lose a single strand of his hair. Even Feng Lin, who was such a shrewd person, couldn't help but secretly gloat. With this earth fiend true fire, not only would he be able to achieve a breakthrough in alchemy, but it would also be a great and rare means to attack his opponent. With it, he was finally considered to have grasped an energy attack technique. It could be said to be his trump card. It was a pity that he had limited time in this primordial world and couldn't try out the true fire's prowess in alchemy. Without any spirit medicine on him, there was nothing he could do either. It was useless to have alchemy skills without any materials to work with. Spirit medicine? Feng Lin's expression turned into that of surprise as he suddenly realized something. How could I forget about this? The primordial world had intense origin qi and retained its primitive appearance. There was no lack of strange and mysterious plants. Any random blade of grass would be considered a rare spiritual object in the outer world. Wouldn't it be a waste to not have a round of plundering when I've come to the primordial world? At the thought of this, Feng Lin couldn't be bothered to wait any longer. With the fire seed harvested, the volcano eruption came to a stop. A natural disaster was resolved. The ravaging beast wave gradually calmed down, and only the lava left behind on the ground turned into rocks, releasing heat and leaving behind traces. Feng Lin immediately left without any hesitation. Although he had just subdued the true fire, he didn't have the time to rest. He released his spirit force entirely and scanned the entire place from a height. He soon arrived before a mountain valley. The spiritual qi here was the strongest, like a spiritual fountain. It was a rare spiritual land even in the primordial world. He looked around and saw 6 mountains that were connecting like queuing dragons. It was undoubtedly a natural formation. There would definitely be mysterious items in a place where spiritual qi gathered. Feng Lin was overjoyed. He lowered down the cloud and entered the region. The moment he took one step into the valley, it felt as if he had broken through an invisible barrier. Endless spiritual qi gushed over from all directions, and he felt as if he was soaking in a spiritual fountain, feeling light and extremely comfortable. The spiritual qi gathered to form fog that filled up the valley, making this place seem like a misty paradise. He took a stroll, finding that this place was filled with life and vigor. There were all sorts of strange and mysterious plants that were growing densely together. This was like an entirely different world, like a paradise in the mortal world, making it hard for one to forget. There was the story of Alice in Wonderland back in ancient Earth. Could it be that there's the story of Feng Lin traveling to the primordial land in the interstellar era? The corners of Feng Lin's lips curled up into a smile as he scanned the surroundings with his spirit force. Even with the spiritual fog obstructing him, he could still see the place clearly. They didn't stop his senses at all. He had obtained the complete legacy from the Furnace Alchemy sect, and it didn't just include alchemy techniques. A lot of records about spiritual medicine were also provided in it. Without spiritual medicine acting as the ingredients, even the greatest alchemy arts would be useless. In the interstellar era, a large part of the ancient medicinal herbs had already gone into extinction, and thus the majority of the alchemy arts could no longer be used. It was still too difficult for Feng Lin, who was just a beginner, to find replacements for those items. He was still fretting over being unable to find the ingredients, when he had unexpectedly gotten the good fortune of entering this primordial world. Since he came across such a good opportunity, there was no way that he would return empty-handed. Right away, a medicinal grass that had gone extinct long ago appeared before him. On the rocky walls that were as tough as metal, a blade of spiritual plant that was covered in glistening dew broke out from the rocks and grew strongly. It only had 7 leaves, not more or less. Each leaf was glistening in silver light, hiding in the shadows. They were like flashing stars, having the same number as the Big Dipper. This was the 7-star grass, the main ingredient for refining the astral pill. It could absorb the powers of the stars, and when refined into medicine, it could allow one to gain the constellation Tao body. The person would then be able to possess the ability to control astral powers and move around in the universe with great ease, as if traveling on flat land. Of course, this was just ancient cultivation terminologies. In the interstellar era, the person would be said to have awakened the constellation-type mythological genes, being able to control the powers of the sun, moon, and stars. What would the value of one of this alchemy pill be if it was successfully created? What would the contribution points be like? The art of alchemy was also the art to protect the Tao. If Feng Lin could really develop the art of alchemy, he wouldn't have to fret over resources no matter which part of the universe he was to head to. After getting his hands on a stalk of 7-star grass, he was invigorated and continued his search. 100 flowers spiritual jade, golden thunder bamboo, spiritual sandalwood. These rare and mysterious plants were all pillaged by him as if they were all free. He took everything he could get his hands on. This primordial world had been left alone for an unknown period of time, without having anyone entering it before. Things like 300-year-old ginseng and 100-year-old FOTI were everywhere as though they were just weeds that grew by the roadside. At the very beginning, Feng Lin would still feel a little surprised. But later on, he didn't care about it at all. He went all out to search, and without realizing it, he had already opened up the furnace and used it as a storage space. The closer he got to the depths of the valley, the better his harvest turned out to be. "Help me! Help me! Help me!" Suddenly, a sharp scream entered his ears, sounding extremely panicky. Feng Lin sent his spirit force over and noticed a big eerie-looking snake in the distance. It was hissing toward the depths of a hole. A cry that was similar to that of a baby rang out from inside. Feng Lin could sense a fat child hiding in the depths and shivering in fright, looking very pitiful. However, the 2 leaves that grew on its head showed that it wasn't actually a human. Ginseng baby? Feng Lin's eyes lit up. Hiss hiss hiss. The snake kept on hissing with a threatening vibe, and its massive body was trying to squeeze into the narrow hole. Seeing that it was going to enter the snake's mouth, 2 drops of glistening tears dripped down from the corners of the ginseng baby's eyes. Feng Lin didn't have the time to think too much and dashed over rapidly. Because the era of cultivation had just started to thrive once again, until now, Feng Lin had yet to see any demonic spirits. Moreover, since the ancient era, it was a fact that plants would cultivate much slower than animals. But his luck was just too superb to encounter this spiritual medicine that had turned into a spirit. Having sensed some movements in the surroundings, the snake raised its head high and hissed, its eyes appearing to be cold and brutal as it stared over. "Is this a flood dragon?" Feng Lin was surprised and looked carefully at it before shaking his head. "It has legs but no feet. This isn't considered a flood dragon, maybe a flood python at most." If it was a flood dragon, Feng Lin would turn to leave straight away without any hesitation. However, if it was just a snake with characteristics of a flood dragon, then there was nothing he should fear. He quickly got close. The snake realized that its threats were useless and immediately bared its teeth, spewing out black demonic flames from its mouth. However, Feng Lin's expression remained calm and he didn't dodge at all. He formed hand seals and instantly, a ball of earth fiend true fire flew out toward the snake. Not only did it scatter the demonic flames, but it also instantly surrounded the huge snake, turning it into blazing snake that dropped to the ground. Swoosh! When the ginseng baby saw that it had just escaped one trouble only to encounter an even more terrifying existence, it grabbed onto its head with both hands, wanting to drill into the ground to escape. Thinking of escaping, Feng Lin had expected this and sent out his spirit force. He beckoned from afar. The earth broke and a big fat child was immediately pulled out. It was grabbed by an invisible hand, unable to break free. Feng Lin was just about to go over and take a closer look. However, that big fat child pouted its lips and immediately cried out agonizingly as if it had seen a demon. Tears gushed down, making it appear extremely miserable. Wah, wah, wah. The crying resounded in the valley and kept on lingering for a very long time as it transmitted out. Feng Lin was speechless. Am I so scary? Chapter 337, One-Day Journey in the Primordial World, 4. Wah, wah, wah. The cry rang throughout the entire valley, sounding extremely heart-wrenching. Anyone who heard it would feel shaken, and anyone who saw it would feel sad. It was too heartbreaking. A big, fat, and fair child wearing a red undershirt was lifted upside down in the air. Its 4 limbs were hanging, causing it to be unable to touch the ground and slip away. Crackle crackle. The flames continued to burn, and the huge snake was roasted over the fire with its oil dripping down. A delicious smell filled the air. Feng Lin sat cross-legged on the floor and started chewing in big bites. The snake meat was surprisingly tender, and it melted when being eaten. An abundant amount of spiritual qi entered his stomach together with the strong fragrance of the meat. It rapidly entered his body and nourished every single cell. Seething heat flowed through his 8 extraordinary meridians and all parts around his body. The snake meat was extremely nutritious and filled with spiritual qi. It was many times better than ordinary gene potions. The flood python was a spiritual creature, being just one step away from becoming a demon. Its flesh and blood were filled with strong spiritual qi, and it could be said to be a mobile spiritual medicine that provided great nourishment. The moment he ate the snake meat, it instantly turned into seething heat that extended out, causing his stomach to burn like a furnace. Feng Lin immediately circulated the Beast King gene and the art of transforming energy into qi, in order to digest the excessive energy. Genetic potential plus 2.8, plus 2.8, plus 2.8. Ever since he became an interstellar cultivator, ordinary food didn't have much effect on him anymore. They were like impurities, not only useless but would also bring harm to his body if taken in large amounts. He could only replace food with nutrient fluids and gene potions. Although they were nutritious, they were bland and tasteless. Anyone would get sick of them no matter how high their tolerance was. This snake meat was completely different. It was tender and tasted amazing, spiking his appetite. Who's the person who said that snake meat tastes like chicken? This flood python's meat is even more tender than the high-quality beef steak. Feng Lin kept on eating like a hungry ghost, but his eyes were fixed on the fat child who was crying and sobbing non-stop. Feng Lin seemed to be thinking of something but had no intention of offering any consolation at all. Although this fat child was crying very agonizingly, it would probably think of escaping immediately the moment it touched the ground. In fact, the people who gathered them in ancient Huaxia would tie them up heavily with red ropes to prevent them from drilling into the ground and escaping. Ginseng baby was from 1,000-year-old ginseng that turned into a spirit. They broke away from their plant appearance and became spirits with a life of their own. When spiritual medicine achieved Tao, their blood and roots would all be rare spiritual medicines that were very suitable for alchemy. Even more amazing was the fact that this ginseng baby had already shed off its original plant appearance and could move freely. No matter how much of it was cut off, it could grow back. It was an ever-growing spiritual medicine. No matter how cute it looked, Feng Lin steeled his heart. He would not be deceived by its appearance and let it escape. From one point, Feng Lin's pair of glistening eyes frightened the ginseng baby, causing it to shiver and not dare to cry anymore. Do you want a piece of snake meat? Feng Lin smiled faintly and didn't give it too much thought. He tore off a piece of snake meat and put it into the ginseng baby's hand. He hadn't expected that the ginseng baby would gaze carefully at it and gulped, wearing a craving expression. In the end, it couldn't hold back any longer and started to bite and swallow the snake meat in big bites. It was even more ferocious than Feng Lin. It narrowed its big jade-colored eyes, looking very happy. This ginseng baby eats meat. This is too strange. Feng Lin beckoned with his hand and grabbed onto the ginseng baby. He sent his spirit force into it and started sensing in detail. Since the ginseng baby didn't sense any ill will from him, it continued to eat its meat without a care, like a hungry ghost. It had forgotten all of the terror it had toward Feng Lin, and its mind was now as clean as a piece of white paper. After Feng Lin scanned it, he immediately went deep into thought. Demonic spirits were mysterious and phenomenal. They didn't just transform into humans after cultivating for centuries. After scanning it, he realized that this ginseng baby's body was completely made from flesh and blood. It was now an actual humanoid being, and thus it wasn't surprising that it was eating meat. In fact, its appetite was a lot larger compared to Feng Lin's. Its teeth kept on chewing and a large portion of the snake meat ended up entering its stomach. After eating the flood python's meat that was overflowing with spiritual qi, the ginseng baby's body also swelled up rapidly like an inflated balloon. If it had been 2 to 3 years old earlier on, it was now probably around 5 to 6 years old, with its limbs growing longer. It only came to a stop after it was so full that its stomach became very round. It lay on the ground in satisfaction and let out a happy cry. Right now, it no longer looked at Feng Lin with a frightened expression. Instead, it was now crawling on his body happily. Those who can give milk are moms, and those who can give meat are dads. This ginseng baby was only 5 to 6 years old, and it wasn't fully grown up mentally. Subduing it wasn't as difficult as he imagined. He let it crawl all over his body, paying it no heed as he took care of the rest of the flood python's meat. He extended out his spirit force. Even if the ginseng baby were to dig into the ground and flee rapidly, he'd be able to grab it back. There wasn't a need for him to be too much on his guard. The massive flood python was over 10 meters long and was as thick as a bucket. What they had eaten earlier on was just a section of its tail. There was still a large amount of its body left. Feng Lin's palms were like blades as he drained the blood and carefully stored the meat. During the process, a round item fell down, landing on his hand. It seemed as if it was condensed from the snake's gallbladder and was glistening all over. Not only was there no blood stench coming from it, but there was even a sweet-smelling fragrance. It appeared to be extraordinary. At the sight of this, the ginseng baby, who had been so full that it couldn't stand up, came pouncing over like a hungry wolf, wanting to swallow up the treasured pearl into its stomach. Feng Lin turned his hand, and the treasured pearl immediately disappeared. The ginseng baby bit onto Feng Lin's hand. Its teeth were surprisingly tough, releasing kachis sounds. Sparks splattered out from the friction, and it refused to let go. Ignoring the ginseng baby's angry gaze, Feng Lin carried it down with one hand. If he wasn't mistaken, that treasured pearl should be the demonic core of the flood python. It'd be too much of a waste to let this ginseng baby eat it. After cleaning up the demonic snake, Feng Lin kept the rest of its body into his furnace's space and then started foraging through the mountain valley again. There were all sorts of spiritual herbs in this medicinal valley, and he was having a good time foraging them. Although the space in the furnace was very big, it was gradually filled up. Such a pity. Feng Lin felt very regretful. It was a very rare opportunity to be able to enter this primordial world. There were countless spiritual herbs he could gather in addition to an endless supply of treasures. It was a pity that he wasn't able to fit all of them into his storage space. Even though he had selected carefully, the space within the furnace was still filled up to the brim. However, he had already obtained the greatest reward from this trip. He had subdued the earth fiend True Fire and taken in a ginseng baby that had turned into a spirit. If he were to still wish for more, he'd be too greedy. It was getting late and he mustn't wait for much longer. He could just come again in the future. Feng Lin didn't hold any hesitations and turned to leave rapidly. He wondered how Zhao Yui and the others were doing on the paved path. Seeing that Feng Lin wanted to leave, the ginseng baby started to cry loudly and tugged at his sleeves, pointing toward the depths of the valley. It seemed that this ginseng baby wanted to bring him somewhere. Feng Lin's eyes narrowed. Could it be that other than spiritual medicine, there was something else in this mountain valley? He no longer held much interest in ordinary spiritual herbs. If he could have other benefits from this, what did a short moment of delay matter? Feng Lin followed the ginseng baby and headed for the greatest depths of the mountain valley. The rounders meandered and fog filled up the place, preventing others from looking in. It was hard to tell where they came from or where they were headed for. There was another feeling that time and space had fluctuated. Suddenly, the fog cleared up and a stretch of light appeared before him. Seeing this, the ginseng baby let out a cheer and immediately ran toward it. Feng Lin quickly gave chase and entered as well. There was actually another world within the depths of the valley. A large stretch of paradise appeared before their eyes. Chapter 338, One-Day Journey in the Primordial World, 5. In ancient Huaxia, there were the records of the Peach Blossom Spring which documented a region that was cut off from the rest of the world. It didn't have any communication with the external world, had its own relationships and ethos, and existed independently from the rest of the world. Even if a person had entered it and left behind some brief records, it was impossible to find the place again. This was the feeling that Feng Lin had now. He took a step forward and the spiritual fog dispersed. A vast scene appeared before him as if it was an entirely different world. The mountain valley was very deep, no one would think that there was another world here. It was a small place with green mountains and clear water. The ginseng baby let out a cheer and ran over happily, twisting its small butt while crying out in a babyish voice. There was an ancient-looking village on the green plains. Smoke rose from there and many figures were darting about within it. Hearing the ginseng baby's cry, all of them looked over in surprise and a commotion broke out. We found ginseng baby. Everyone, come and take a look. Whereon did this wild child run off to? What good food did it eat? How did it suddenly grow so big? A group of villagers ran out and carried the ginseng baby, assessing it over and over again, afraid that it had been hurt. The ginseng baby appeared as if it had met its family and cried out happily. Suddenly, its eyes lit up and it crawled down, running over to the three little figures and played with them. Feng Lin threw a glance and noticed that these three kids were a small tree, a lingji, and a snow lotus. Their actual forms were all great nourishments as well as rare spiritual medicines. This village was secluded from the rest of the world and had a large number of villagers. They seemed like humans, but the leaves that grew out of their heads showed that they weren't ordinary people. They were brimming in spiritual qi. Each and every one of them was a transformed demonic spirit. This was a village of demons. Ginseng baby, where did you run off to? That monster came attacking here earlier and I thought that you had been captured by it. Why didn't you come back after so long? You gave us a scare. The group of demons surrounded ginseng baby and kept asking it questions, showering it with concern. Yeah. The ginseng baby kept on swinging its hands and feet, pointing repeatedly toward Feng Lin and seeming to be saying something in an ancient tone. Although Feng Lin hadn't heard of this language before, the language was mixed with mental transmissions that couldn't be hidden from him. An elderly with a face full of wrinkles walked up and thanked Feng Lin. He cupped his hands together. It seems that an honorable guest has arrived and saved ginseng baby. No humans had visited our 100-grass town before. It's our negligence. Please come to our village. Sir, you're too kind. Feng Lin returned the greeting and was secretly surprised. This group of demons was very polite. They appeared as if they had studied before and conducted themselves like scholars of ancient times. Is this a human? It's really rare. This is the human race that the old ancestor had mentioned? They don't look all that different from us. They are different. I heard that humans are born with Xiantian Dao body, unlike how we demons need to cultivate to acquire them. I heard he saved Ginseng baby. The group of demons surrounded Feng Lin and assessed him, as if they had seen something novel. Feng Lin stood in the middle and didn't appear too concerned. His gaze turned toward the surroundings. The land was flat and vast, and the houses were neatly laid out. There were fields, beautiful ponds, as well as mulberry trees and bamboo. There were also reared chickens and dogs. These demons wore ancient huaxia long robes and didn't appear too different from humans. They stayed in this world, not communicating with the outside world. Thus, these demons hadn't met humans from the outside world before. When they saw Feng Lin's appearance, they immediately chatted excitedly amongst themselves. "Honorable guest, please take a seat." The tree demon, who was the village head, led Feng Lin into the village. He prepared a big table and brought out a tea set. Then, pointing with his finger, 3 leaves gradually drifted down from his fingertips and landed into the teapot. After the hot water was added, it immediately released a strong tea fragrance that was capable of cleansing one's heart. Feng Lin smelled it and immediately felt a chill running down from his forehead and through his entire body. It was as if he had been cleansed by a refreshing aura. He was astonished. The village head smiled. "Do excuse us. Our 100-grass town has never had visitors before, and we don't have anything to treat our guests. My actual form is a 1,000-year tea tree. You've saved Ginseng baby, and we only offered this simple tea. I hope you don't mind." Feng Lin didn't think the same. How could this be considered as simple tea? This was clearly spiritual tea. The tea leaves from a 1,000-year tree demon had matured through countless decades. Therefore, both the tea fragrance and spiritual qi had been condensed to an extreme. When drank in the long run, it would give the cultivator tremendous benefits. "Sir, you're too kind." Feng Lin appeared respectful and slowly raised the teacup. 3 tea leaves floated on the clear green tea, forming a vortex and spinning non-stop. A trickle of tea entered from his throat, and it felt as if a stream of spring water had gushed down, instantly striking his entire body. It was as if he was naked and embraced by a clear breeze. His pores opened up and it felt as if his entire body had cleared up from inside out. Genetic potential plus 4.8, plus 4.8, plus 4.8. His potential surged rapidly. Feng Lin's countenance changed and he immediately shut his eyes and regulated his breathing. His genetic potential surged rapidly, giving him another free transcendent genetic point. Adding the one from before, he now had 2 genetic points. All it took was just 1 cup of tea. Just the fact that it allowed him to gain an additional genetic point alone had saved him from a lot of hard work in his cultivation. He now owed a huge favor to them. Feng Lin opened his eyes and thought. The value of these tea leaves must be immeasurable. Consider what amazing effects they had. The village head must have paid a great price to bring this out. Feng Lin looked at this group of demons and his eyes glowed. He was now in no hurry to leave. These demons were all transformed from spiritual herbs and plants to begin with. Although they looked ordinary, they had tremendous value. They didn't communicate with the outside world and were pure at heart, not harboring any schemes. As Feng Lin had saved the ginseng baby, they hosted him very warmly. Many bowls and chopsticks were brought to the table. There were both meat and vegetable dishes, and they filled up the entire table, smelling wonderful. A gourd-shaped wine container was placed before Feng Lin. "I don't drink wine." Feng Lin frowned and rejected. The village head didn't think much of it and said, "Honorable guest, you can refuse other ordinary wine, but you must definitely drink this cup of wine. This is monkey wine. It was with great difficulty that we managed to trade it from the monkeys of the Rotten Peach Mountain. It's brewed from a myriad of spiritual fruits, can cleanse the body of impurities, and has exceptional effects. Monkey wine? Fong Lin got curious about this legendary fruit wine. He didn't reject any further and drank 1 cup of it. The wine wasn't strong but had a deep fruity fragrance that hit right into his throat, letting him feel extremely refreshing. However, seething heat quickly gushed out and flowed throughout his entire body. It felt as warm and comfortable as if he was soaking in a hot spring. His body also felt completely relaxed. The effect of the wine gushed up, giving him a floating feeling. Fong Lin was immersed in the feeling, carefully sensing the changes that the wine had brought to his body. Roar! Suddenly, an astonishing beast roar sent a tremor through the air, bringing forth violent demonic air that was gushing over like strong gales. The great prowess instantly caused Fong Lin to wake up. At this moment, a demonic spirit transformed from a gold thread, ran over and cried out in panic. Village head. This is bad. That flood tiger king from the Blackstone Mountain has led its demonic troops to fight its way here. Chapter 339, One-Day Journey in the Primordial World, 6. The gold-thread spirit fell on all fours in fright, shivering incessantly. Damn it, I knew that those demons from yesterday were just here to scout. They took away many of our villagers, and we've lost contact with many of them like Ginseng Baby. This time around, we mustn't let them have their way. The tree demon village head was enraged as well. But that flood tiger was transformed from a mutated beast and has many demonic troops under him. They are vicious and aggressive. We aren't a match for them at all. We can only call out Old Ancestor. Otherwise, we might not be able to save our village. The beast roars were filled with brutal intents, and the 100-Grass town was in a state of chaos. All of the demons appeared to be feeling uneasy. Fong Lin was deep in thought. Although this 100-Grass town was independently situated in a land of paradise, they didn't have a peaceful life either. No. The village head decisively rejected everyone's suggestion. Old Ancestor is old, and each time it fights, we're depleting the rest of its limited life. Unless necessary, we mustn't do it. This is probably the reason why the flood tiger has sent its subordinates to attack our village multiple times. It wants to wear down Old Ancestor's lifespan completely and then take down the entire village in one swoop. But without Old Ancestor, we won't be their match. An old woman who seemed to be transformed from vines walked out and said weakly, "Calm down for now and use magical techniques to defend the village's exterior. I'll go speak to Old Ancestor before we discuss anything else." The village head thought about it for a while before heading out in a rush. Howl, howl, howl. The beast roars rang out non-stop. Fong Lin looked into the distance and saw black waves seething and sending up smoke and dust. The many wild beasts were baring their fangs and charging over like a massive wave, wanting to drown the entire village. Longevity art. In order to protect their homes, these demons started taking actions despite feeling terrified. Hints of green light scattered down. Countless seeds rose from the ground, forming many vines that intertwined together and wrapping the entire village into a tight sphere without any openings. The demonic beasts at the front were the closest, and they were immediately pierced by the pricks that were as sturdy as metal. Guys, attack. Today, we must massacre this annoying 100-Grass town. A brutal howl rang out from the sky, and the demonic aura soared into the sky like a smoke signal. Fong Lin's eyes narrowed and he looked into the distance. A burly figure with a height of 3 meters stood at the top of the mountain. It had the head of a tiger and body of a human. Its body draped in scale armor, and a single horn grew out from the top of its head. Fong Lin had no idea what kind of demon this monstrous beast had transformed from. It was shrouded in an ominous aura, and its withered yellow eyes stared toward 100-Grass town with a great yearning. It had clearly felt that they would be able to take down this village of demons. What a vicious monster! Fong Lin sat at the table quietly, doing nothing but appreciating the primitive delicacy's taste. It was as if everything had nothing to do with him. Demonic beasts and demonic spirits. Both of them were monsters, but one's actual form was wild beasts while the other was plants. This was a battle between races. Even if they had transformed into demons, it was impossible to resolve the feuds between enemies on the food chain. These demonic spirits were all transformed from spiritual medicines, and in the eyes of demonic beasts, they were great nourishment and thus it was natural for them to be coveted. Feng Lin was an outsider and he had no plans to interfere. If the battle between both parties became too intense, he might be able to. His eyes turned cold. Pa pa pa. Just then, a series of anxious footsteps suddenly rang out. Feng Lin looked over to the source of the sound and saw that the tree demon village head had returned, holding onto a wooden plate that was covered by a piece of black cloth. He had no idea what item the village head was holding. Upon seeing Feng Lin, the village head's expression immediately turned into that of joy. He quickly walked up to Feng Lin and cupped his hands together, saying sincerely, "Honorable guest, please save our village this once." Feng Lin frowned. He hadn't expected the village head to come back to plead for his help after making a trip out. However, he wasn't planning on interfering with this matter. The demonic beast's army was approaching, and the village head wanted Feng Lin to risk his life even when there were no benefits to reap from getting involved? How could there possibly be such a good thing? Village head, you must be kidding. The number of demonic beasts is too big and it's not something I can handle. Feng Lin rejected calmly. Honorable guest, please rest assured. Although the flood tiger is a mutated beast that was born between a flood dragon and a tiger, it isn't your match. The village head said confidently. I haven't fought against that demon king before. How do you know that it isn't a match for me? Feng Lin wondered where the village head got his confidence from. This was what the old ancestor said. The old ancestor has a profound mastery over destinies and can pry into heaven's secrets. Therefore, what the old ancestor said definitely won't be wrong. The village head said, I won't let you do this for nothing. The old ancestor said that if you were to save our village this time around, you can choose any item from our village's collection of ancient treasures. After saying that, it waved its hand and the black cloth was unveiled, revealing 3 ancient items. One of them was a green vine that was brimming with life. Even though it had been plucked off, it was still seething with vigor. Another one was a purple round gourd that was as sturdy as metal. The last one had the most unattractive appearance and was just a rusty copper coin. Its unique trait was its 2 sharp edges that came out from the sides like a pair of wings. Each of them was seething with spiritual qi and appeared to be extraordinary. Feng Lin was tempted and he asked, Can I really choose any of them? Yes, the village head nodded and said. Feng Lin was instantly tempted. He walked over and first picked up the purple gourd and knocked it with his fingers. A clanking sound rang out. He sent in his will and could sense space inside that was the size of a house. This is a storage treasure. Feng Lin couldn't help but feel tempted. Storage treasures were very hard to come by, and they could store a myriad of items and were very convenient. Until now, Feng Lin still hadn't gotten his hands on one and he could only use the space in the furnace as storage. It was very troublesome. Although this purple gourd was good, he would only make his decision after taking a look at the other 2 items. In terms of appearance, the green vine was the best. Feng Lin grabbed it in his hand and instantly felt strong vigor that could nourish and strengthen all lives. If his guess wasn't wrong, this vine seemed to be able to stimulate plants' growth. It would be very useful for planting spiritual medicine. This effect isn't bad. Feng Lin wanted to become an alchemist, so he'd need a lot of spiritual medicines. With the vine, he would be able to plant spiritual medicine in large quantities and be self-sufficient, enjoying an endless supply of them. This copper coin. At the sight of the last ancient treasure, Feng Lin immediately frowned. This copper coin seemed to be covered in rust, and its spiritual qi was weakening. It seemed to have been severely damaged and was on the verge of breaking apart and losing all of its uses. However, one mustn't judge a book by its cover, and the same concept applied for treasures. To be careful in case he were to miss out on a real treasure, Fong Lin still picked it up carefully and channeled his spirit force to check it from inside out. Fong Lin had no idea what material the coin was made from. Although it looked very small, it weighed several hundred genes. Ordinary people wouldn't be able to lift it. The moment he channeled his spirit force in, it was as if he had entered an independent world. It's really a piece of treasure. Fong Lin was secretly pleased. Thankfully, he had not judged the treasure by its appearance. Otherwise, he'd have suffered a huge loss. The space in this copper coin was unrivaled, extremely vast with no end in sight. It was also filled with streams of thin gray fog and emitted ancient primordial aura. When was it originated from? Fong Lin's gaze gleamed. Could this probably be Xiantian's spiritual treasure? Chapter 340, One-Day Journey in the Primordial World, 7. In the ancient days, before all lives were born, even space-time didn't exist. The world was opened up, being in a state of chaos. Countless strange creatures were naturally born from it. Thereafter, with the Big Bang, development started amidst the chaos, producing the initial space-time. However, the strange creatures that experienced the Big Bang weren't destroyed. They landed in the new universe and scattered out to all areas. Some treasures were born before the world and tended to possess countless mysterious abilities. They could neglect the existing rules in the world and possessed their own strange abilities with their own law of causation that would catch others unaware. They had their own judgmental rules. Once activated, they could, for example, ignore most defenses in the world and immediately capture a target. There were stories of such treasures in various myths and legends that existed in different civilizations on Earth. The Northern Europe's myths and legends controlled thunder. And only the Thunder God could wield the Thunder God's hammer. There was also the Pandora's box that existed in the Western myths and legends, said to seal up the entire hell. Huaxia had the longest history and had the most number of such treasures in their myths and legends. In the story Journey to the West, there was the violet gold calabash. It was said that Taishang Elder Lord had harvested it from an ancient celestial vine and refined it. As long as a person's name was called and the person had replied, they would immediately be sucked into it. It wouldn't take long before the target would dissolve in it. In the investiture of the gods, there was the yin-yang mirror. When the yin-yang mirror was pointed toward a person from afar, it would cause the person's soul to scatter. There was also the story of the 24-ocean immobilizing bead, with each of them capable of developing a world and possessing endless profoundness and mysteries. These treasures were known as Xiantian's spiritual treasures. Born before the universe and possessing endless spiritual auras, they were named thus. Right now, this was the feeling that Fong Lin had. He felt streams of Xiantian's spiritual aura coming from the space within the copper coin. It was unknown how ancient it was, but it was born before the universe. However, this aura was extremely weak, being faintly indiscernible, as if they would disappear at any moment. Could this copper coin be? Fong Lin's heart skipped a beat. Winged copper coin. This obvious characteristic made him think of an extremely remote but mysterious treasure that had unique effects in Huaxia's myths and legends. The treasure itself didn't have a great prowess but could counter all other treasures and was very incisive. This was highly likely. This copper coin was spotted in rust and appeared useless. However, its interior space was extremely big and he wasn't able to see its ends using his will. Fong Lin had only encountered two similar treasures like these, and both of them were in his hands. One of them was the measureless divine metal cudgel, and the other was the pill concoction furnace, the heavens and earth furnace. It was a pity that both treasures were at the initial refinement state and had yet to be able to completely release their greatest prowess. This showed that the copper coin was definitely not an ordinary item. After being clear about this, was there really a need for him to think further about his choice? Although the other two treasures were quite good as well, they weren't worth mentioning before a Xiantian spiritual treasure. Even if it was a Xiantian spiritual treasure that was so severely damaged that it was unknown how much of its prowess was still left, even if it was damaged, he wouldn't be losing out at all. Xiantian spiritual treasures had their own Xiantian Dao charm patterns. If he could just study these charm patterns thoroughly, the value would still far surpass that of the other two treasures. I'll be taking this copper coin. Feng Lin made the decision on the spot and grabbed onto the coin, not releasing it. No one was going to take it away from him. Seeing that Feng Lin had made this decision, the tree demon village head appeared very stunned and advised him, "Honorable guest, do you want to give more thought into it? This violet gold calabash can store anything, and this evergreen vine can augment the growth of the spiritual medicines. Both of them are much better than this rusty copper coin. We dug this copper coin from the mountains many years ago, and its chi activities are completely lost. It no longer has much value." These demonic spirits were very honest and were sparing a thought for Feng Lin. "There's no need for that. I have an affinity with this treasure." Feng Lin smiled and didn't explain further. The village head had clearly not recognized the value of this copper coin, thus, Feng Lin naturally wouldn't be that foolish to be explaining it to him either. If he reaped great benefits from this, he should just be silent and enjoy the rewards. There wasn't a need to attract unnecessary trouble. Seeing that Feng Lin had decided and couldn't be persuaded otherwise, the tree demon village head sighed before pleading, "Honorable guest, there's no time to lose. Those demonic beasts are almost getting into the village. Please help us out." "All right." On the account of the Xiantian spiritual treasure, Feng Lin didn't reject any further and acted decisively. He darted out and quickly arrived outside the village. The demonic beasts attacked with a grand momentum like tidal waves that wanted to drown the entire earth. They surrounded the village from all directions, not allowing anyone to escape. The stretch of black wild beasts' bodies appeared extremely terrifying. All the demonic spirits in the village curled up together, shivering. Roar. At the sight of this, the demon with a tiger head smiled hideously. It suddenly let out a huge roar that was like thunder crackling in the sky, causing a group of monsters to drop down in fright. It smiled proudly. When the demon king bellowed furiously, the other demonic beasts also cried out. There were all sorts of demonic beasts, including tigers, leopards, and wolves. The beastly howls they released sounded extremely vicious. Feng Lin stood at the very front, facing this ferocious aura and smiling coldly. "Beast King might? I have that too." His body shook slightly and then swelled up, as if he had become a violent monkey that stood on 2 feet. His eyes turned gold and were filled with viciousness. Howl, howl, howl. Feng Lin gathered his breath at his diaphragm and then let out a long cry as he raised his head. His voice was like that of a monkey that pierced through the sky. A majestic aura shook the air, forming violent waves that gushed out in all directions. Invisible auras descended and those wild beasts appeared as if they were facing a great disaster, sobbing as they kept on backing away. The sound of the beasts' howls came to a stop. Feng Lin stood in front. The place was cleared off as the beasts backed away, not daring to face him head-on. The Beast King Jin had the power to shake up and scare all beasts. It wasn't something that these ordinary demonic beasts could take on. The demon with a tiger head glared with eyes wide open, radiating an evil gleam. It locked its gaze onto Feng Lin, as if it had seen a great foe, and it kept on growling. Through its senses, Feng Lin's entire body was giving off a beastly massacring aura. Clearly, he was also a beast king and was here to snatch his position as king. The demon was enraged. At that moment, the tiger demon forgot all the other demonic spirits. All of his hatred was focused on Feng Lin and it released deep growls that were like stifled thunder, trying to display his strength. Feng Lin didn't show any signs of weakness and released the Beast King might without any restraints, challenging the tiger demon across space. It was as if they were two beast kings that were battling over their territories, fighting each other to the bitter death. The surrounding demonic beasts all stopped their actions and dodged to the side, not daring to be brought into the fight between the kings. What's going on? Why did those demonic beasts stop? This is unbelievable. All the demonic spirits from the 100-Grass town felt very surprised. The village head seemed to have sensed something and was instantly shocked. This honorable guest is clearly a human, but why does he possess a demon king's might? Could it be that he was an extremely strong demon that had bewitched everyone? Come. Feng Lin beckoned toward the tiger demon challengingly and walked over. Many demonic beasts scattered off, wearing expressions of fear and submission. In their eyes, Feng Lin was clearly a beast king whom they had no idea where he popped up from. The new beast king was going to challenge the old beast king's position. King versus king. It wasn't something that they could interfere with. Feng Lin walked up to the tiger demon and provoked a battle between beast kings.